Hi, I'm Aliza and I'm from Vancouver, Canada. I don't really have a home, but I do tend to go back to Vancouver because that's where my parents are. Yeah, so I originally was working in events in Toronto and I got laid off of my job, and the next day I booked a one-way ticket to Thailand. I hadn't really traveled anywhere outside of North America or like the Caribbean. And so I didn't even embarrassingly probably know where Thailand was on a map. The ticket kind of grew, the plans kind of grew into like 2 months in Asia. And when I did end up getting there after 2 weeks, I was like really, really homesick. I was not sleeping. I was at a hostel for the first time ever. I had insomnia. I was like taking sleeping pills during the day. Nothing was working. And I called home and I was like on the phone with my parents, and my mom was like, just drop everything, book a ticket home, come back. It's fine. You tried it, you did it. And it's okay. It's okay to turn around and come home. And there was like a pause, and then my dad was like, you started this, you got to finish it. And I'm so glad he did, because I did finish it, and it was like literally the best experience of my life. It was 2 months. I did Thailand, Bali, Vietnam, kind of like in hostels, backpacking. I had hundreds of friends. I grew as a person. They say like travel always makes you grow, but you don't really know how, and it's not really something you notice that's so conscious. You don't come back and you're like, and wow, like people have access to no running water. It's like just everything in your world sort of just shifts a bit, and it's like you've put a pair of glasses on, or there's just some clarity that you didn't have before, and that was very addicting. And that's where I kind of got hooked. And I knew that I needed to do that again. And I also was not going to live through another Canadian winter. So I had to figure out how to get a job that would give me another 3 months off next year, same time next year. And the only way I could do that, since I was in events, was to work for myself and pick up contracts. So I started like hassling people on LinkedIn at the city of Toronto, which was like a pretty premium place to work in events, because you actually get paid for your time, where in a lot of other event companies you don't get paid for overtime, and you can pick and choose your contracts. And I hassled a bunch of people on LinkedIn, and I ended up getting interviews and getting jobs right away, and I got to pick and choose the contracts I wanted. And that was back in 2017. And then January 15th, 2018, I booked a trip to Central America, and 2 months turned into 3 months turned into 6 months turned into 9. I ended up traveling through Central America, and then so Cuba, Guatemala, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and then over to Europe. And I moved all my things to Colombia, and I was like, I live here now. And and then I kind of went to Europe. And when I was in Europe, I was like, okay, I have to get a job. So I met another nomad who needed somebody to do like some sort of assistant, like client management work. And I started doing that, and I made it work. And then when I was in Europe, I got a referral for an events job in Dubai. And I got the job when I was in Spain. Half my stuff was in Colombia, half of it was in Canada. I was in Europe, and I had to get to Asia in 2 weeks. And I was like, that's the moment where I realized stuff just didn't matter. My company was going to relocate everything, but the time I would lose moving everything just seemed so unnecessary. So I moved to Dubai for a fashion events job with literally a backpack. And my backpack is very small because I can't carry anything. I bought everything while I was there, and I started over again in Dubai, and I was there working for a year and a half before the pandemic hit. And then I got another job that was remote, that was completely not related to events, which was tragic, but there were no events during the pandemic. And I had to pivot, as lots of nomads do, to keep kind of this lifestyle alive. And I did, and now I work in third-party legal services. So, sort of. And I'm moving on again. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think you realize that life is not this like vertical growth game. It's really about collecting experiences, growing horizontally. And only you know that you're truly growing. It doesn't matter what it says on paper. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter how good your job title is or how much you're getting paid. Only you know that you're pushing and you're challenging yourself. And for me, that's what's so addictive. That's what I crave. Those are the type of people that I like to meet. And that's the type of people I meet abroad. So that's how I've stayed in the game. I think what I have right now works. So I work remotely. I unfortunately work on Pacific Standard Time, which is the worst time zone to commit to when you're a nomad. But I like it. I like that because, yes, I have kind of backpacked in hostels, and that is an experience like no other, and I highly recommend it. I highly recommend getting it out of the way as well. But I think what's most important is finding what career and what job opportunities speak to you and then working around it. So if it works best that you can save up a bunch of money from some corporate job and then go backpacking for a year, do that. And if it works best that you work in contract periods and you get to work for 3.5 to 4 months and then you take 2 months off, do that. And if it works best that you can work while you're away, then do that. But whatever it is, I mean, your career goals and your travel goals are always achievable. And that's the beauty of it. If you really want to work remote and you want to be a nomad, there is a way, but you just have to find it and you have to want it bad enough. Mexico, I think, is a big one. I was living in Oaxaca for 5 months earlier this year during the pandemic. It's got a lot of character. The people are really nice. It's safe. It's small. I was in Oaxaca City, though a lot of the nomads tend to prefer Puerto Escondido because it's a beach town. I'm actually not so much of a beach bum. I prefer cities. And so Oaxaca City was a dream to me. There's endless amounts of cafes. There's a huge art scene. The people are super nice. I ended up making like a lot of really amazing local friends that really shaped my experience there. And of course, if you're working from the US, Mexico tends to be cheaper. And I think you should go where you can get treated well and you can live a lifestyle that doesn't make you have to think so much about what you can and can't afford or what you can and cannot do, because that always creates a lot of stress in people's lives. So I've traveled, I think, 16 countries alone, and I've been lucky, knock on wood, to never have an issue as a female solo traveler. When I'm traveling, I just kind of put myself into situations. I mean, if I'm having dinner at a restaurant, in Mexico, one of the stories about how I met one of my friends was I heard her and her husband having dinner, and she told the waiter that her cocktail was great. And I was like, well, which cocktail did you order? And she was proper, like, across the room. And so it wasn't like a lean over to the next table, like, hey, excuse me. And she was like, oh, I had the second one down on the menu. And then her husband was like, are you here alone? And I was like, yes. And so they were like, come on over, have dinner with us. And like, it was just, that was where it all started. And, they introduced me to some friends that they had, and that ended up being like my family in Mexico. So I always just insert yourself, whatever I guess we're conditioned to do. In America, we wouldn't even if there's one person sitting on a bus, you wouldn't go sit next to that person kind of thing. You need to just put yourself out there. The worst somebody's gonna say is no, and you're never gonna see them again. But but at best, and what happens 99% of the time, is that person's probably impressed by your bravery, probably wants to hear your story, and probably surprised by your kindness. And I don't think that it's human to just reject that. And you'd be surprised how many people, just end up talking to you or approach you. But yeah, I always put myself out there. I always invite myself to things. I always message people that I meet saying, hey, I heard you were doing this. Do you mind if I come along? And if they say no, they say no. Yeah. Well, I am by no means an expert on this part. But if you have any tips, please send them to Tayler and she will forward them on to me. I think it's important to really get to know yourself first and understand what truly is your ideal lifestyle. What's your ideal situation? What do you want? Are you traveling because it's like a phase and maybe you eventually do want to go back and have something more stable? Do you want to explore all you can so you can kind of return home? Do you enjoy being on the road? Do you enjoy, budgeting is so important too. Do you enjoy, what kind of travel do you enjoy? And location, do you enjoy beaches or do you enjoy cities? What time zone do you work on? There's so many variations of what you should be looking for when you're nomad dating, I think. But once you kind of have those priorities set out about what's important to you, just as much as dating can't work when you're not nomadic, dating can't work as well when you're, the same thing can happen when you are nomadic and things cannot work out. So getting to know yourself is important no matter whether you're nomadic or not. Huge fan of dating apps. I prefer Hinge. I don't use Tinder, and Bumble is okay, but I personally like Hinge because you can actually change your location. So before I'm going somewhere, I can change my location and scope out the scene. In person, yes, co-working spaces, coffee shops, expat kind of hubs. I've had people approach me, and even if it was a friendly situation, maybe it's rolled into more, or they've introduced me to other people that ended up I ended up going on dates with. I've sat in co-working spaces where this is a one-off, but where a guy just airdropped a shirtless photo of himself to me. Whatever the strategy, it's all fair game. So yeah, there's countless amount of ways, but be open-minded, and you never know. Sometimes I think people are gonna be awful, not awful, but I think they're gonna be not maybe compatible, and I'm really hesitant to go on the date, and then I do, and I don't know, we just end up really clicking, and then we end up traveling a bit together, or whatever the case is. And at worst, it's always a fun romance story. So put yourself out there. Risk is hard. Risk is a skill, and you get better at it. You have to really take small risks at first to really understand that they're worth it. But once you trust your gut and your intuition, and you start making decisions based off of it, you will eventually end up. I've never taken a risk that hasn't resulted in reward, but it takes a lot of fine-tuning and practice to realize that. You have to start somewhere, so you have to take one risk. And after that, you'll start to train yourself to realize that you won't let yourself end up homeless on the streets. You can leave that corporate job, you can leave your apartment, you can make things work, you can cut into your savings. I thought that traveling would put me behind on my career, and it literally catapulted my career because I met the right people at the right time traveling, and I ended up landing my dream job. My literal dream job from when I wrote in my journal as a 20-year-old. I ended up getting because I left everything and just risked it all. So I would say that it's not easy, and nobody's saying it's easy, and no nomad will ever tell you, hey, this was a really easy decision for me. If you can't make it, I can't help you. It's normal, and it's very normal to feel scared. But you should always bet on yourself, and nobody else will ever have the same journey as you, and you kind of have to carve out your own path. And that's what I've done. And people often say I'm brave, and I don't really look at it like that. I mean, life is full of choices, and some people choose mortgages, some people choose children, some people choose, 3 weeks of vacation. But I didn't want to. And for some people it works, but for me it didn't. And so it took a lot of risks. You will be scared, but just, especially traveling through the pandemic, there was like a huge amount of judgment. There was a huge amount of, my parents were super hesitant. And when people are like, you don't need to go on holiday, I'm like, this isn't a holiday. Like, I have a compulsion to roam and explore. I have a compulsion to see the world and change it. I have like, it's not, to me, it's not a vacation. I need to be out there, This is the moment my life changed, was after I took that trip to Asia, that first trip where my first trip that I took to Asia, where I backpacked for 2 months. Right before I left with my roommate, like a shopping bag. Let's call it like a Topshop bag. I left a Topshop bag. I was running late for the airport, and I said to my roommate, hey, can you, and my friend was also subletting my place. So my 2 roommates, I was like, hi, can you just throw this in the corner somewhere? Like, I gotta go. Just put it anywhere. And then, as I mentioned, I had a really tough time in Asia, but I plowed through it, got through it, met hundreds of people. Like, my mind was blown. I saw so many things. I experienced so many things. I came back home 2 months later, and I said to the 2 girls, hey, how's it going? What's new? What have you guys been up to? And they were like, not much, been working a lot. That guy, this guy, like, he's this, but like, we're still the same. And so I was like, oh, okay, cool. Then I like looked over and I was like, oh, the Topshop bag is still there, where I left it. And they both didn't even realize. They were like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it is. And I was like, you didn't move it? It didn't bother you? It's been 2 months? And they're like, no, like, I didn't even realize it was there. And I was like, how could you not move the Topshop bag? I mean, it's just been sitting there for 2 months. Like, I've literally changed as a human being, and you've just let the Topshop bag sit there. And they're like, and that's the moment I realized that you can live life. You can live life staying in the same job, being in the same relationship, saying you're gonna fix the kitchen doorknob, saying you're gonna take that leap, that risk, and you can't, and you don't, and 5 years pass, and I just never wanted to live my life again. I mean, my 2 friends, they're great, but, and they know I tell this story all the time, but I never, ever didn't want to maximize my day and live every day like it mattered. I mean, the Topshop bag is a metaphor for so many things in our lives, and I wanted to make sure that I was always doing my best and living my best, and I didn't just want to live day to day where I didn't even notice where time went. So they say Beyonce has the same amount of hours in a day as we do, and I sure as hell was going to make the most of it.